The sound of fists slamming against steel echoed through the concrete walls. In a cell barely bigger than a parking space, an inmate screamed into the silence, "This isn't what they said it would be. This isn't how they told us solitary was supposed to work." His voice cracked, filled with both anger and desperation. Red lights flickered above the corridor, alarms blaring, as guards rushed past the narrow slit window in his door. He had snapped after 23 hours, locked inside a grey box with no human touch, no voice, no relief, only his own mind eating him alive. Then, just as suddenly as the noise began, there was silence. His screams stopped. His fists stopped pounding. The cell was quiet. Too quiet. One of the guards looked at the sealed door, then at his partner, fear flashing across his face. "Open it?" he asked. But before an answer came, a sound rose from the other side of the steel, slow, dragging, almost like someone scratching the wall with their nails. What they found when they finally opened that door would force everyone to question what was myth and what was reality inside ADX Florence. Months earlier, before that moment of madness, life at America's most secure prison carried its usual rhythm. The walls of ADX Florence stood like a fortress in the Colorado desert, miles away from any city, its razor wire glittering under the sun. Inside, men lived in silence, each one locked away in their own small cell. No one shared a room. No one touched another person. They lived in what the prison called administrative segregation. To outsiders, solitary confinement sounded simple. A prisoner alone in a cell, safe, controlled, and quiet. But for those inside, reality was different. The silence wasn't peace. It was pressure, squeezing their minds until something inside cracked. Marcus Hale, a bank robber turned informant, had been sent there after testifying against his old crew. He thought solitary might actually be safer for him. No one to stab him, no one to threaten him. At first he even welcomed the isolation, but after months without a real conversation, his mind started inventing one. He would talk to the shadows in his cell. He swore he could hear voices behind the walls. One night, while staring at the tiny slit of a window that only showed a strip of sky, Marcus told himself, "I can take this. It's just me. I'm stronger than the rest." But the longer he tried to convince himself, the louder the whispers in his head became. He didn't realize he was talking out loud, arguing with people who weren't even there. The guards noticed. They always noticed. They logged his changes in behavior but said nothing. In ADX Florence, silence was the rule. Guards didn't chat with inmates, not unless they had to. Marcus was left alone with his new friends, the voices. Then came the day when Marcus snapped. It started with him tearing the mattress apart, convinced something was hidden inside. When he found nothing, he turned his rage toward the steel door, pounding it until his hands bled. The sound echoed down the corridor, breaking the heavy silence. Other prisoners, locked in their own boxes, listened to the chaos, some shouting encouragement, others laughing like it was a show. The guards arrived, but they didn't rush in. They waited, watching through the slit. They had seen this before. Solitary at ADX did this to men. It made them unravel. What came next, however, was worse than any of them expected. Because when Marcus finally stopped hitting the door, he didn't collapse. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just stood there, staring at the wall, whispering something to himself. His voice was too low to hear. The only thing the guards could make out was the slow, scratching sound that followed, and then Marcus smiled. The guards exchanged a look, uncertain if they were watching a man lose his mind or watching something far more dangerous begin. That night, in the cold silence of ADX Florence, Marcus's scratching grew louder, sharper, until it drowned out the emptiness of the cell block. And then suddenly, the alarms began. The alarms wailed through the block, red lights flashing against grey concrete. Guards stormed the corridor, shields raised, batons ready. Inside his cell, Marcus stood completely still, his hands red and raw, his smile stretched across his face in a way that made every man watching uneasy. When the steel door clanged open, Marcus didn't fight. He didn't scream. He just whispered, "You finally came." His voice was flat, distant, as if he was talking to someone else entirely. The guards shackled him, dragged him out, and searched the cell. What they found made no sense. The mattress was shredded, the sink torn from the wall, and carved into the concrete with nothing but his fingernails were words. The walls talk. Deep scratches formed crooked letters across the grey, some lines still fresh with blood. The prison doctor declared him unstable and ordered observation, but Marcus wasn't sent to a hospital. At ADX Florence, most men stayed right where they were. The observation meant cameras and notes, not real help. For a few days, Marcus went quiet. He lay on the floor, eyes on the ceiling, not eating, not moving. The other inmates whispered about him, calling him the listener. Then came the low hum. At first, guards thought it was just the air system, but one night, when a patrol passed Marcus's cell, they heard him chanting. Not in anger, not in madness, just steady, low words. They are here. They are always here. This was the myth the prison didn't like to talk about. Inmates swore that ADX Florence itself was alive, that too, his silence wasn't empty at all. They believed the walls whispered back if you listened long enough. Guards called it nonsense, but after Marcus, they weren't so sure. Weeks passed, and Marcus's behavior swung like a pendulum. One moment he was silent, calm, almost normal. The next, he would explode, throwing himself against the walls until his body was covered in bruises. The cycle was predictable. Calm lows, violent highs. Then came the night no one forgot. The corridor was quiet, each inmate sealed away, when the cameras picked up movement in Marcus's cell. He was pacing, muttering to himself, his hands dragging along the wall. Then, without warning, he began clawing at the concrete again. Blood smeared across the surface as he scraped, faster and faster. The microphones caught fragments of his words. "They're inside. I have to let them out." The guards rushed toward his cell, alarms blaring again. But before they could open the steel door, Marcus turned toward the camera. His face was pale, eyes wide, blood dripping from his fingertips, and then he whispered directly into the lens, "You'll hear them too." The screen went black. For reasons no one ever explained, the camera feed cut out at that exact moment. When the guards finally entered, Marcus was gone. No hole in the floor, no broken door, just an empty cell, smeared with blood and words scratched deep into the walls. The last line read, "Solitary is never empty." Some guards insisted Marcus had been transferred quietly, paperwork hidden away. Others swore he had lost his mind so badly that the prison covered it up. And some, especially the men who worked that night, whispered a darker idea. Maybe the walls of ADX had finally taken someone back. And so the myth lived on. To the outside world, solitary confinement at ADX Florence was just punishment, cold and simple. But to the men who lived it, and to the guards who watched it, it was far more. Myth and reality blurred together, leaving only one truth behind. No one left solitary the same.